welcome back to Mom's Basement. Steve, take it away.
Mom's Basement is a podcast where we discuss video games, movies, and other nerd culture that shaped our lives. From inside Mom's Basement, we dust off the old goodies that we feel deserve a spotlight in modern gaming and pop culture, all without wearing pants.
Most important part of Mom's Basement. So today on the chopping block, we've got Duke Nukem 3D. Very excited about this one. This is going to be a good one.
Hail to the king.
Hail to the king. Hail to the king. And the second most... sorry, no. Before that, before the second most important, we have to focus on the first most important part of it. So Duke Nukem is a 3D first-person shooter game developed by 3D Realms, that company. It's a sequel to Duke Nukem and Duke Nukem 2, and it's voiced by John St. John is the voice of Duke Nukem, I'm here to kick ass and chew some bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum. And basically the whole story is there are aliens, and Duke Nukem kills them. I think that's not even necessary for the actual story arc of Duke Nukem, but yeah, it's pretty good. But before we get into it, Steve, what are you drinking today?
So, being that it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning here, I have a nice cup of coffee that I've doctored with some Kahlua. So, you know, you can't not drink in Mom's Basement even early in the morning.
Even early in the morning. This is true dedication. And I myself am doing Duke Nukem favor himself. This is some nice whiskey that I have. So cheers. Cheers to you, Steve.
Cheers, brother.
Let us begin. And hopefully everyone at home is enjoying your own cold beverage or warm beverage or alcoholic beverage, wherever you are. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Mom's Basement. But yes, we've got some nice production value today. I've got a green screen, and this is going to be used for all kinds of fun stuff coming up and from Mom's Basement. Steve, I think you're getting one too soon.
Yeah, mine's on order from Amazon. So
fantastic.
We'll, next time.
Fantastic. So let's talk about a little bit of Duke Nukem. Why did we pick Duke Nukem this week, Steve?
So I think the big thing was just what it did for first-person shooters, in terms of looking at more like mature level first-person shooters, how it kind of established the genre in terms of the different features of the game with, you know, different weapon choices and honestly the mature value. I mean, you can give strippers dollars and they shake their boobs. Let's be honest. That's the real reason.
Yeah,
it's the Shake It Babies.
The Shake It Babies. It's a good enough reason. This game for me, I don't know. Like, this game came out. When was the actual release for not Duke 3D, but like Duke 2, and like the first actual Duke itself?
Oh man, I have to say like probably early 90s.
Yeah, I was very, very young. I was born in '89, so it was probably before I was. It was before. It's got to be before early 90s. Yeah, hold on. I should have looked this up before. Let me check it really quick. Actually, just do this really quick. Duke Nukem.
91. Yeah, 91, I was right.
Yeah.
90, so 1991.
I was like 1 or 2 years old when the first Duke came out. So I never really played it until it was already kind of an established thing, and I think you were probably also way too young to have mom and dad allow you to.
Oh my god, yeah. No,
Duke.
I remember going over to one of my friends' houses, and because we didn't get a computer until I was probably like 13 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
But I remember going over to one of my friends' houses and sitting and watching him play video games on the computer, and we would sit and we would play them together. We would talk about them. We would look at strategies on them. I think we talked about it with the Monkey Island stuff last time.
Yeah.
But you know, the major thing that we played when we were sitting there was first-person shooters. So, you know, we were playing Wolfenstein 3D, like the shareware version. We didn't have the whole thing. You know, we got Doom 2, so we're running around like blowing up aliens, and then lo and behold, Duke Nukem comes out, and it's like, what is this game?
Yes.
This is amazing. And again, I mean, it added in, you know, like it added in the ability, who would have thought, to jump. You know, so you could jump in Duke 3D. It had a jetpack. It had holograms. It had all of those, like really, like really awesome features that made it more immersive, and
Hmm.
you could pay strippers to show their boobs.
Yeah, this is so. When I think about early '90s FPS shooters, for me, Quake, Doom, Duke Nukem. But if when I was a kid, I remember easily. If you showed me an instant still when I was a kid about Quake or Doom, I wouldn't know which one was which. But if you showed me an instant still of Duke, I would know Duke. It had a different art style. It had a different, like there were because in Quake and stuff it was just monsters, and in Doom it was like aliens and stuff. But in Duke it was like pig cops
Big cups, yep.
and like weird monsters and stuff like that. It was just cool. Like I don't know. It had a different feel to it. It was rememberable. It was very
Well,
memorable
I
for me.
mean, to your point, right? I mean, not only did the guys just die, they exploded.
Hmm.
The little brown, like the brown aliens, when you shoot them in the lower torso, it blows off the entire half of their body.
Yeah,
They fall onto the ground and they shake their head.
yeah, yeah. It's
And
like
as you kick them in the face.
yeah, and that was the other thing, like kicking the melee attack, and as you said, jumping. It had a lot of mechanical things in it that weren't in FPSs at the time. But it was like it was more than that. It was the first M-rated game. Like before that, for like that I ever
Yeah.
was introduced to. I think there were M-rated games before it. Like was it like Leisure Suit Larry and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
weird point and click M-rated games and stuff like that. But there was no other game really that was M around at that time. It was kind of a new thing. I mean,
Yeah.
were there? I mean, violence. There were a couple. Was violence an M-rated thing back in when you first started doing FPS and stuff like that? Like, was
I
007
can't.
M?
007? No, 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 no. That was not for sure. I'm trying to remember when ESRB came out.
It was probably for Duke. I mean, it could seriously be. I didn't
Oh,
do all the
Mortal
research.
Kombat. Mortal Kombat was
Oh,
like the reason.
yeah,
Um,
MK. That's right. That's right. Because there was blood, and you could like punch
yeah.
someone and they
So
spike.
ESRB was founded in '94.
Okay.
So I mean, you have a game here that literally as soon as they, like established the rating system or founded the ESRB, you have
Duke
this game
Nukem.
that really pushes the bounds.
Yeah,
you
very
know?
much so. Very much so. But you bought the remastered version that came out recently, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I picked it up on both PC and an Xbox One, and I played around a little bit with both of those. How about you?
I picked it up on PC. I played it for a little while. It was for the remastered one that I played. I turned it on with all of the newer stuff like 3D rendering and
Okay.
like all of the newer things to it because I opened it up and I turned it to what the game was. Like they have they have like
Classic. Yeah.
different settings for it, like all the key bindings. It was actually very well done that how much you could customize it and change everything. But I have to give major props first before I talk about that to how much they actually um, kind of revamped it because a lot of these old games, like I've been playing Doom a little bit recently, Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 3, and the new Doom games that are out right now. Just enjoying them as an FPS, just kind of minding this shoot and loot kind of thing. But the old games, it's just like here's the game, dated, clunky, and bad kind of. But the Duke game, they really did a good job of making it like it's playable. It's
Well,
not great, but it's playable.
and it's and the homage. I mean, they added in the newer render of the game an entire fifth chapter
Yes,
that's made by like completely made by the original
and
developers,
revoiced by
revoiced.
John St. John as well. Yes, so
And I mean, and I mean, let's just take a second. Aside from the violence, aside from the gore, aside from the strippers, the iconic lines, the use of those like Evil Dead um, lines in Duke Nukem. I
they were
mean,
all
you
just
have
taken
Hail to the
from
King.
Hail to the King. So
Yeah,
this
they were
is
taken from Army of Darkness,
yeah, Army
right?
of Darkness, Predator, Terminator,
Yes.
all like the late '80s action flicks that were
Yeah.
around. Was they just took all of that and made it. They just
Yes.
gave it
I
to Duke
mean,
Nukem.
like
He was the
you could.
conglomeration of all of like the action heroes.
you can hear those lines and know exactly where it's from. Like
Yeah.
it's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. I'm all out of gum.
Mm-hmm.
Hail to the king.
Yep.
Shake it, baby.
It's
Damn it.
yeah.
You know, I mean, like.
Yeah, shit. When you get killed, it's great. It was, I, that to me is what gives me the most nostalgia out of it. Is sometimes the gameplay is whatever it is. I mean, to be quite honest, the gameplay itself is very similar to Quake and Doom and all these other kind of Twitch shooters and stuff like that. Again, the storyline doesn't really stand out too much, as I explained earlier. It's just like there are aliens. And Duke is killing those aliens because reasons. But no, it doesn't matter.
It's like what is the second level on LA Meltdown? It's you're running through an X-rated video store. You know, like you're going in the back room
Yes.
with all of the nasty like TV booths, and
Yeah.
you're like massacring pig cops.
It's
Or guys on the toilet, you know,
Yeah.
like you open the door and there's a brown alien sitting on the toilet taking a dump.
you
Like
shoot him in the face with a shotgun. Yeah.
yeah, right.
But for me, also, one of the things that really brought out in that game was the gun sounds themselves. I think that was one of the first games ever where like you don't think about it, but audio of a first-person shooter is so important. If you don't really feel like the gun itself, it's empty. It's just you're clicking a button at units. But like the shotgun, that sound of like that goosh from the shotgun, yeah, and the chambering of the round itself and the cocking of the gun, that was one of the first games that I was really like, whoa, they really did this cool. Like I didn't play like Doom and stuff before that, but like Doom was more about like the explosions and shit like that, where Duke was more about like the one-liners, the M rating, and then the weapons themselves. It was very cool.
Well, I mean, and you know, for example, also to add that you had like the pipe bombs where you could literally hear the tinking sound, and then you had the delayed blast. My absolute favorite gun in that game are the fists, like the fist rockets. Just so cool.
Yeah, there were interesting guns, cool guns. Yeah, I had a good time replaying it. It was very fun to just kind of get back into it a little bit. But I mean, I didn't play it a lot. Like this was probably the first time in my life that I really was able to play it. Because when I was a kid, I was kind of young. I was M-rated, and then by the time I was old enough to play it, there were games like GoldenEye. So it was totally outdated by the time I was able to get it. Actually, the first Duke game I really played was Duke Forever. Yeah, Duke Nukem Forever. Yeah, that was mini game City Duke with like the way too long mini like remote control car races and like the clunky controls. But like when you actually got into a game, part of the game that was like a shooting or like a room of enemies, it was fun. It had the same kind of Duke jokes, the nudity and stuff like that. And like I remember there's a whole like an hour-long segment of the game where you're like looking for like sex toys in a strip club to give to a lady to get a lap dance. It's like is like what you need to do to proceed with the story of the game. Like it was
obnoxious.
Yeah, it was maybe the best game I've ever played. Like as I was playing
I would agree.
It was like this game is horrible, but it's fucking hilarious. Is what it was.
It's the best worst game. Yeah.
It's the best worst game I've ever played. Yep.
Yes. Agreed.
But yeah, I mean, besides that, I don't really have any childhood memories of Duke, besides like I played it and like the strippers and stuff like that, and the actual sounds and the jumping and like some mechanics. But for me, it was all Duke Forever. It's all Duke Forever is what what I think of now, at least when I think of Duke.
Yeah.
But
for me, like I said, it was growing up with 3D and just the memories that I have playing that and the way that those lines stay in my head.
So let me ask you, this was a release for the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, right? So all of the kids now with their Switches can experience the glory that is Duke Nukem.
How did Nintendo approve Duke Nukem is the question that I have. Like Nintendo, I remember there's like Manhunt or something like that, like a game where you like saw a man's head off, and then there's Animal Crossing where you're like an animal that like makes a house. Like there's such a dissonance in some Nintendo games. It's like Mario Galaxy, Duke Nukem 3D.
Right. Right.
I don't know how. Did you hear anything about like why Duke was approved for Nintendo?
I'm sure. I know that Nintendo has been going a lot with like more indie games or more small scale developments
Yeah,
to
yeah.
build out their repertoire. Because I think you're right. Like before, Nintendo has always been very exclusive
Family
to their
market.
titles
Yeah.
and their family market and their exclusive content,
Hmm.
right? But I think with the Switch, they're really trying to make sure that it has longevity and survives and establish it as a viable console.
It makes
So they're
sense.
trying to have more adult, more games that span the gamut of ratings. So
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's a good business move. It was just very surprising when I heard like Duke Nukem was being released on the
yeah,
Switch. Like,
right.
I guess I'll buy it on my Switch. But yeah, I don't know. It was like very, very. It was just interesting. But
Yeah. So should we talk a little bit about the like how it stands up in terms of mechanics and
yeah, yeah,
like what our experience is playing?
absolutely. Go ahead. You can start.
So one of the things that I found is what was really interesting is like you talked about Doom. Maybe you were going to talk about this, but the way that those old FPSs, the game was much slower in terms of its pace,
Mm,
and playing it now using like so for example, like originally when I played Duke, I was using the arrow keys, right? So it's the arrow keys, the controls for firing, the spacebar for jump.
mm-hmm,
Didn't even use the mouse, right?
mm.
So you're looking left and right
Oh,
with the
that's
arrows.
so correct. I didn't even. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah,
So in a big room, you're literally turning, like you're rotating yourself and firing.
yeah,
And then with the mouse and WADs, you have a lot more flexibility to move quickly.
yeah,
So I found myself like at least early on, like doing a lot more strafing and
yeah,
moving around really fast, um, and just annihilating the game.
yeah.
And I was like, how is it so much easier now? But I think it's remembering that I was playing with arrow keys and controls, so I didn't have a lot of movement or, that much fast pace. So I think it's interesting that games have sped up because games like Doom now, as you mentioned, like
Oh
you can't stop.
no,
You don't stop in that game.
no. There's not even a reload function in that game. You just like you run out of that ammo and you
Yeah.
switch the weapon to a different weapon. But
Yep.
you're totally right. I never even thinking about it now. I played more Duke Nukem on my TI-83 calculator in high school than I actually did on the console on the computer. To be quite honest, like that was one of the games I downloaded and I would just play during like study hall and stuff
Yeah.
like that, or in the back of like chemistry. And I thinking about it now, like that game I was able to run on my calculator, and I just played it on my PC now. And you're totally
Hmm.
right. Like running with WADs and a mouse and keyboard is it turned it into a Twitch shooter, which is what I had compared it to with Doom and Quake and stuff like that earlier. But it wasn't. You're right. Like when it first came out, it was you had the cardinal directions basically, and you could turn, and there wasn't much strafing. It was like difficult to strafe. It was easier to like actually like snake your way into a room and kill stuff like that. So yeah,
Hmm.
you're totally right. I didn't even think about that. You're 100% correct. 100%.
So
So
I think that's just the pace of the game is what stood out as being really interesting.
yeah. So how do you think this lines up? So we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what is Duke Nukem's place in the gaming timeline? Do you think of it more as a revolutionary for FPS or revolutionary for what a game company can get away with, like a mature rating or like a game concept?
That's a good question. Um, I don't think I think there are elements of Duke that have become staples, like your arsenal of items, and I
Hmm.
mean, but then again, like games like Dark Forces,
I was just
you
gonna say
had like
Dark Forces. You had that as well, though.
flashlight,
Yeah.
and um, so yeah, I think Duke Nukem was a really polished experience that pushed the boundary for I think mature rated games
Mm.
and violence and in first person shooters.
I 100% agree. As far as an FPS goes, I don't think it really revolutionized any mechanics. It had some new stuff, but nothing that was like, oh my god, I can't believe this hasn't been in a game before. I think the
Yeah.
technology had just been like, okay, now we can add more sprites, we can do more things, we can add more graphics, we can do more controls, add more points into the game. But there wasn't anything, in my opinion, that was out of like this is insane now. Like this is totally crazy. But as far as what a game can get away with, strippers and things like that, and even the new Duke Nukem Forever that came out, that game also like I remember I was playing it again just to kind of get the full scope of Duke. and I was like, God, I can't believe this game was approved. Like,
Oh
it was
yeah.
just like the game itself is. It's just cool. Like, it's a cool timepiece. I think you could get away with talking about first-person shooters without mentioning Duke, but you couldn't ever mention the mature rating of games without mentioning
Without
Duke.
Duke Nukem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
without
I
Duke
think
Nukem and
so.
Mortal Kombat. It has it's like walking the line between that, but it's not like it's not just a vulgar game. It's also a good FPS game. You know what I mean? Like, it's it's not just this gimmick either.
Well, and you know what? I think the one thing that I will say that that stands out to me in terms of at least my progression of first person shooters and looking is the variety of weapons.
Mm.
Because Doom, like thinking before it, like Doom, you had your basic pistol, shotgun, chain gun, and then you had like guns like the BFG
BFG,
or the
yeah,
plasma gun.
yeah,
Dark Forces, you had your pistol blaster, the held blaster, the repeater, you had some
the
grenades, you had
crossbow, the
the bowcaster and all that kind
bowcaster
of
type,
stuff,
yeah,
right? Um, but Duke Nukem, you had your standard pistol, shotgun, chain gun. You had the shrink ray,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
so you could go and like step on
Yep,
guys. You had the freeze gun, so
yep.
you could freeze them and kick them. You
You,
had the fist rockets. So I think in terms of weapon variety, even the pipe bombs,
yeah. Mm,
I think the weapons stand out to me most in Duke.
you're right. Yeah, it was the first game that had guns that were more than just a gun. It served a function, and it was an interesting mechanic to have in the game. And I agree. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's very very cool. It's very fun.
Yeah,
To
I mean,
play in.
and same thing with the shrink puzzles, right? So you had to open up the locks and open up the picture, and it would blast a shrink ray at you, and you'd have to run through the mouse hole to the next room to unlock stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's just interesting.
yeah. So I mean, they've gotten so just as you say that, thinking about how this influence grew, there are so many games. For example, South Park's Stick of Truth. I replayed that
Yeah, oh
actually just a
yeah.
couple months ago, and they do. There's a whole area of going into like the mole men or something like that, the mole people, and like shrinking and
Yeah,
growing and things like that. And just thinking about playing Duke now and comparing it to that, there has to be some, like that's. I don't know if that's where
connection.
it
Yeah,
came from, more or less, but like there had to be some connection as to video games and that shrinking and growing and like the mature rating. Like
yeah,
Duke had a bigger impact on stuff like that. I think you're very right. More than just an M-rated game, the actual gun mechanics themselves and the gun concepts. I think you're right on the money on this. That
really neat.
Duke maybe innovated a little more than I give credit for. So very interesting. So in the future, well, not even in the future yet, just kind of current um, things that are going on, FPS, mature rated games and things like that. Is there anything else that you can really see like currently out right now that maybe Duke had an impact on, or that the impact of Duke brought this in? So I had mentioned a little bit of the South Park Stick of Truth. That's maybe stretching a little bit too far. Obviously, Duke Forever, current game that's out right now.
Yeah, I know. I think like games like Doom Eternal, the grotesque and violent like kill animations, I think in some way resemble like I said, blowing someone in half and having
Mm,
them shake their head and bleed out.
yeah,
I think that those kind of things really started with games like Duke Nukem, or just the way that just the way that enemies explode
yeah.
and like blast into a pile of guts.
Excessive
I think,
gore. Yeah, it was very
yeah, I mean,
Mortal
like
Kombat. Yeah.
because it pushed the boundary in terms of language. It pushed the boundary in terms of adult content. It pushed
Mm,
the boundary in terms of like gore and kill. I mean,
no,
like
totally.
literally, Dan. Like one of the levels, you walk into a triple X studio and there's a dominatrix video, like porno being shot.
I loved it. I was
Like
planning on
that doesn't happen in
recording.
games,
No,
Like
the
that's like
funniest thing.
GTA style
No,
stuff,
totally.
right?
I was actually planning. One of our buddies, Jordan, had mentioned that I should record, and put up like an ongoing like from now on, like as we're talking, have
Yeah,
a little video of it running somewhere. And I
I
thought
like
about
that.
doing that, and I was recording, and I realized I was like, I can't, I can't
Too
put
much,
this on
too
the
much
internet.
adult
Yeah, yeah. I
content.
was like, I can't. I think it's fine because I've seen Let's Plays of Duke and stuff like that on YouTube, but still, it was like this is a bit much for Mom's Basement. I think at least to have that much there. It's good to talk about, but as far as future stuff, what do you see anything in the pipeline about any other kind of I don't want to say adult FPS, but like mature rated FPS similar to like a Duke Nukem style that are coming out. I looked, there was nothing that I saw that was blatant like new Duke game or anything besides the new 3D and the Chapter 5 that just recently came out. But
Should we let Pete handle this one?
oh yeah, I think so. Pete, what do you where is he? I screwed it up. There it is. What do you think, Pete? Thanks, Pete. All right, yeah. So that's about all that Duke is in the future as well. I 100% agree with what he had to say there.
I mean, I think like what's the big one coming out? I think Godfall is on slated for later this year, right?
Correct. Maybe early next year due to Corona stuff like that. Maybe I think
Maybe
got delayed a little bit, but yeah, it's relatively soon within 12 months.
But again, mentioning current games, like I know that, for example, not that I like invest time in playing them, but the Call of Duty games have pushed the bounds in terms of like some of the things that they'll put in. Like I remember one of the early Modern Warfares had a level where you're like basically posing as a terrorist and like blowing up people in an airport,
completely
right?
forgot about that. As Modern Warfare 2, I think. Modern Warfare 2, yeah, there was like an option to skip the level itself, and like if you wanted to do it, you didn't actually have to pull the trigger to like beat the level itself. It was just like you went through. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you were just killing innocent people on that, and it was massive, like huge in the news before Modern Warfare 2 came out. I remember that.
Yeah, and I don't think that stuff like that I don't think things would have gotten to those levels without games like Duke Nukem pushing the envelope.
Now I'm trying to think of other FPS that would have pushed the envelope. And honestly,
well, I mean, even like, but same thing with like, I know it's not FPS, but Grand Theft Auto, right? I mean, like the stuff that you do in those games, especially the modern ones.
yeah,
Visit strip clubs and get lap dances and all that kind of stuff.
You're right. Duke opened the door for that type of game, and I think there's a place for that. Like it's fun to be able to do things that you can't do in society. Like you can get away and be like, I'm gonna steal this car, and like there's some sort of like, it's just interesting to be in a game and just be a total like, what is it?
Yeah, I mean,
like deviant in a game like this. It is very fun sometimes.
You can stand there in Duke Nukem. You can pay strippers to take their top off, and then you can blow them up with a shotgun, and dollar bills fly out of their body.
Yeah. This is 1980. This is 1991, 1992. Like, or what was it? 94, 95 or something like that.
Yeah. Like mid 90s.
Yeah, mid 90s. So at that time, yeah, that was massive for that time, I imagine. But now, I mean, it doesn't even. The funny thing is, like, when I was playing it again recently, I played it a little bit this morning when I was playing. It doesn't even seem like tame because think about this: you go back and play Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh yeah.
Those games are not violent games anymore. Like, yeah, you're punching and attacking. There's some blood splatter, but the new Mortal Kombat, like 11 fatalities, where like they stab someone in the eye and it goes to like the X-ray of the blade going into their face, like that is violent. And when I went back and played Duke Nukem, it didn't seem really like quote unquote tame. You know what I mean? Like it was still like, wow, I paid a stripper to shake her boobs at me. It was like, wow, it was like, wow, this is kind of fun. Like it wasn't like the game itself. I said earlier, it was a little bit dated, a little bit clunky from the game mechanics itself, but that's how all these kind of games are for when they came out. There's only so many controls that they had available at that time. But the actual game itself was still like, wow, this game still hits these marks, hit these buttons that make it interesting to me. I had a good time with it. But I think we talked about what it was in the past. We talked about kind of the present idea of Duke Nukem, where it exists now, where it exists in the scope of FPS and things like that. And, Pete explained the future of Duke Nukem for us very succinctly. But I think we're getting close to kind of final thoughts unless there was anything else that you wanted to bring up before that?
No, I think again for me, it was a game that it was a little slow paced and it was a little repetitive, but um, I think does a good job of standing the test of time for shooters of that era. There's
Hmm,
enough interesting variety in terms of weapons and in terms of level design, that at least kept me interested in playing through the first couple of chapters.
totally.
I think I played like the first two. I played through all of LA Meltdown and then about 3/4 of the way through Lunar. I can't remember the name of it now.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Apocalypse or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
The games themselves had some really good like set designs and stuff like that, and some cool areas to fight. Like in Doom and stuff like that, you're basically just going through hell, and like Quake was just like kind of this weird like dystopian world. But Duke was kind of like you knew where you were.
Familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like familiar areas. It was like set in more of a like a kind of
Familiar settings.
familiar
Video
setting.
store,
Exactly.
movie
Yeah.
theater. Which again,
Exactly.
video stores, that's something that kids
Yeah.
these days,
Yeah.
the kids
That's.
these
I
days
didn't
aren't
even
gonna
think
even
about
know.
that. I didn't even think about that. The video store. Yeah. Oh man, nostalgia. Super nostalgia thinking about that. But let's get down to it. So Steve, let me hear your your final thoughts, and I want to know your rating for
Okay.
Duke Nukem 3D.
I think for a game that's literally you can get for $20
Hmm.
for 5 chapters with voice acting and hilarity, it's definitely worth the pickup. Something that you can put down, come back to, and not miss a beat in terms of where you left off.
Mm.
Not super compelling story, but I think entertaining game, entertaining guns, entertaining gadgets. I would say 3 out of 5 pig cops.
3 out of 5 pig cops. I like it. So for me, I would agree with a lot of what you said. One thing I will say is if you didn't play Duke Nukem as a kid or as a young adult or whenever you played Duke Nukem, then I think the $20 trip isn't going to hit all of the nostalgia points that it hit for you as it did for me. It didn't hit the same points as me. So I would say pick this up on a sale. If you didn't play it, if this is your first time, like, oh, I wonder what this game is like, I wonder what's going on. $20 if you had remembered it and you like go back and relive it is cool. But again, as far as a first person shooter, it didn't like throw anything super new out there. They have some very interesting guns, some very interesting concepts, some very interesting cool parts of the game. It is very funny, it is very vulgar, it is very interesting. So it's definitely worth a buy. If you've got $20 laying around, I think that's great. But even if I would say if you found it for 15, it would be worth it just for that. 20 for the amount of time that I would just kind of open it up, played it for like 3 or 4 hours, and thinking about okay, how much money per hour it was. I was like, it's still fun, but I would have it didn't hit me the same way. But I would also, being the game that it was during the time that it came out, and giving it the impact it had forward with mature games, first person shooters, and just kind of like that raunchy humor style with the massive gore and everything like that, I would also give it 3 out of 5 pig cops myself as well.
Nice.
So we are getting towards the end of the episode today. So Steve, I think we are going to start wrapping it up. Next time on Mom's Basement, we are going to be going over Final Fantasy
Final
7.
Fantasy 7.
So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and remember, hail to the king, baby. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all in the next one on Mom's Basement.